Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we have some interesting things to discuss when it comes to this apparent Nintendo Direct that will be happening later this week, right before the official 40th anniversary for Super Mario Bros. There appear to be some apparent Nintendo Direct leaks that are causing quite a stir, and so we're going to be getting into that today. Now, a couple things I'll mention here. I did just move into my new place. Not everything's fully moved in yet. I have to work on the acoustics and all, so forgive me if the audio doesn't sound quite right yet. And I've had a lot going on, so I don't have as much time to focusing on the editing for this video, so please bear with me here. But if you're new here, I ask that you watch the video, give it a listen, and if you find yourself enjoying the video and you enjoy Nintendo news, rumors, and theories on a near daily basis, consider subscribing. But if you are a returning subscriber, thank you for sticking around. But let's now get into things here. So, something that's causing a little bit of an interesting discussion, and then we'll get into these apparent leaks, is this new render, and I say new with quotes here, air quotes, this new render that people are seeing from this recently announced little toy set of Mario and friends playing baseball. So this is a cool design of Donkey Kong, but it's not actually the first time we've seen this design. It's just the first time that it seems to have garnered extra attention. Because if we go back to July, Packnatic on Blue Sky actually had discovered a pretty high quality render of this Donkey Kong design. And yeah, Donkey Kong looks great. He's seen a new design for this new era. We've seen it in different promotional material. We've seen it in Mario Kart. We've seen it in Bonanza, although it looks a little bit different in Bonanza because that's its own thing. It's in the movie. We know all that stuff. It's interesting. But what some people are also taking this recently announced toy set to mean is that maybe a new Mario baseball game is going to be announced soon. Mario Sluggers. And I don't want to say it's impossible because, well, I think we're overdue, and the Slugger series is a series. We've seen more than one, and we've seen Strikers, we've seen Mario Tennis, we've seen Mario Golf. Sluggers is the odd one out here in terms of a Mario sports series that hasn't seen a return as of late, although you could also argue that Mario and Sonic at the Olympics is another, but that seems to have simply been something that is no longer going to happen because it's ran its course. And so it's possible this toy set could be a subtle hint towards that. However, I think it's unlikely. Now, maybe there's a greater chance that this is simply a hint towards Mario's 40th anniversary. The reason it would be a hint is because we've seen that with prior Mario anniversary years, and when I say prior years, I mean the big 5-year intervals, like with the 35th anniversary, there is an increased amount of merchandising and overall advertising for the Mario brand. So if we're starting to see more of that here, that could be further hints toward there indeed being some sort of big 40th anniversary plan that we'll likely see unveiled in presumably the Nintendo Direct later this week. But I think it should also be noted that every year we're going to see Mario merchandising, right? Like, just because we're expecting the 40th anniversary this year and every time something announced for Mario doesn't mean it has to have to do with Mario's anniversary. What I like to consider as potential evidence towards Mario's anniversary is just an overall increase in quantity compared to prior years. If there's more so than usual, then I think that bodes well. Or you look at things that wouldn't normally be announced at any random point. Things that go a little bit out of the ordinary. Like, there's always going to be random Mario toys being announced, right? But I look at certain things like the My Mario line that just came out last week. Or the clothing lines that don't come up every year, but they pop up this year during the 40th anniversary year, and they show up in other years like the 35th anniversary year. Those are things that have me leaning towards, yeah, maybe there are some signs towards Mario's 40th anniversary, and we're likely going to find out in just a few short days if there are some bigger plans here. Like maybe that rumored Super Mario Galaxy 2 remaster. And for those that don't know the source of the rumor, that's coming from Special Nick of the Xbox Era podcast, who has been known to know things. But on to the recent apparent leak here that is causing quite a stir. So, Switchforce put out a video where he talked about how the Direct, the General Direct, so he's been saying it's going to be a General Direct, is going to include 3 games that have to do with a 7. Now, for those who may be wondering why should we trust Switchforce here, well, Switchforce throughout the years has heard things here and there, but more recently has been talking about the partner showcase timing, the Indie World showcase timing, and they've been spot on with that. And they also had talked about the Direct happening on September 12th, and then everyone else later corroborated it, like Video Games Chronicle, Need the Hate, Nintentalk, and others. And so Switchforce is the originator of this supposed General Direct happening at the end of this week, and is right about other recent presentations as well. And so here they are teasing some sort of content we will see in this General Direct. 3 games having to do with 7. And so what might those games be? The one obvious one that comes to mind is Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. We've seen recently from gameplay demonstrations and previews that the game is looking like a really great port on Nintendo Switch 2, which is very exciting. And we need to get a release date for that game. So I wouldn't consider us hearing about 7 Remake showing up in the Direct as any sort of big leak, because, well, we already know they need to give us information about the game, like a release date, and it's supposed to come out this year. That makes sense. The big third-party game coming out for Switch 2. But what about the other 2 7s? That seems to be where there's a lot more room for speculation here. Now, Necrofelipe from Universal Nintendo suggested it would be 7 Remake, Ace Attorney 7, and Call of Duty Black Ops 7. And so Switchforce responded to this and said, not a soul has guessed the correct combo yet. What are your picks? So here Switchforce is saying that this specific combination is not correct. Switchforce isn't saying that it's entirely wrong either, but not this specific combination. And some people were wondering if maybe he was hinting at something with his phrasing here, how he points out Soul. Could there be a game having to do with Soul? Here, Vanna Thursday thought Soul might be referencing Soul Calibur 7. And Switchforce responds, just so you don't get too excited, Soul Calibur is stuck on NSO GameCube. So it seems like Switchforce is saying that it's not Soul Calibur 7. And I gotta tell you, for a brief moment, when Vanna Thursday was speculating on Soul Calibur 7, I got extremely excited, because I was like, oh man, that makes so much sense. I would love to see a return to Soul Calibur. And recently getting Soul Calibur 2 through Nintendo Classics from Nintendo GameCube, it's been a real delight to play that game again, my favorite Soul Calibur of the entire Soul Calibur series. And I would love to see Soul Calibur come back and have a Switch 2 version, perhaps with a modern version of Link and maybe other Nintendo characters. But it looks like that's not the game that is being hinted at here. Doesn't mean we won't see Soul Calibur come back sometime, but doesn't seem like that's what's going to show up here. And then Yvonne Ramos says, please, if Ace Attorney 7 is not in it, just tell me now. I don't want to keep hoping in vain. Switchforce responds, negative Captain, with a little sad smirk emoji, frown emoji or something like that, you know, the little characters there. And so also seems like Switchforce is saying it's not Ace Attorney 7. Now, doesn't mean Ace Attorney 7 can't come sometime down the road, and maybe it's not even that far off. But according to Switchforce here, at least the way he's presenting it, because you could argue, oh, there's like a double negative, but I don't think that's what he's suggesting here. The 3 7s that Switchforce has heard about does not have to do with Ace Attorney 7 or Soul Calibur 7. But what is interesting here, looking through this thread, there's been no deconfirmation of Call of Duty Black Ops 7. So there could be a little bit of a subtle hint here that Black Ops 7 is part of these 3 games having to do with 7. And this is interesting because we've recently heard reports that Call of Duty Black Ops 7 will not be available at launch for Nintendo Switch 2. Now, that does not mean Call of Duty Black Ops 7 won't eventually make it over to Nintendo Switch 2, and it's also possible these reports could be based off outdated information, slightly off for whatever reason. That's something else to consider here, and reminder, Call of Duty needs to come to Nintendo Switch 2, if not this year, definitely probably next year, because Microsoft and Nintendo have entered a legally binding agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo platforms for the next 10 years, and that agreement was signed a couple years ago already, and we haven't seen anything yet. So when are they starting this agreement? You gotta think it would be very soon. And maybe the reason why, and I think it's a safe bet, why we haven't seen anything announced yet is just because the Switch 2 has just come out, and a lot of developers are still working on getting the ball rolling with development of their different projects, and so there's a lot going on with Call of Duty and the different teams involved there. They may just need a little bit more time to get Call of Duty ready for Switch 2. But maybe it's not so far off, and Black Ops 7 specifically could still come to Nintendo Switch 2, if not at launch, not too much later, and could be a part of the games that are in this next Nintendo Direct, and maybe a part of these 3.7s that Switch Force has been teasing. Now, some other possibilities I've seen some people suggest, maybe like a remake of Ys 7, if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. I'm not too familiar with the series. I've heard of them, but I haven't played any of them, is my main point. So maybe that could be going on. Something else that some have considered is perhaps a non-cloud version of Resident Evil 7, because it is already on Switch 1, but it's a cloud version. What if we got like a well-running, good-looking version that is native for Nintendo Switch 2 and not cloud? That would be in the Direct. That would count. Now, some of you might be wondering, why aren't we speculating on like Nintendo-made titles that have to do with 7? And sure, it's possible that Switch Force has heard of that, but I would say in general, when leaks happen, it's usually third-party related. Like, Nintendo does keep things close to the chest, and it's not to say we don't hear things here and there, we do, but it depends on the source, and it seems like with Switch Force, his sourcing comes from some sort of third party that may pick up information about Nintendo things, like direct timing, but I would say it's a safer bet to assume that these 3.7s have to do with third-party games involved with the Direct. What that other 7 will be, I'm not sure, but I would say it's most likely a third-party game. Something I considered, but I don't actually think is what it is, unless there's some sort of mistake here, is maybe like the 7th Soulsborne game. But when I think about it, we have Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3, so that's 4. But then there's also Bloodborne, Sekiro, and Elden Ring, which is already 7. Now, could Elden Ring, us seeing more of Elden Ring, which we're also expecting in this Direct, we're expecting a release date because it's supposed to come out this year, would that count as the other game having to do with 7? I don't know if we even consider them as one continuity, if that's even fair to say it like that. It's possible. It maybe also they're not counting one particular game like Sekiro or something like that, and they are counting the Duskbloods. I think it's unlikely, or at least if it is the case, I think it would be a bit off. But I do think we're going to see Elden Ring, and I also think there's a great chance we're going to see more on the Duskbloods. But also, I don't think that's like a lofty, crazy prediction either. But what do you all think? What do you think this other 7 game could be? And maybe there is another. Maybe it's not Final Fantasy VII Remake, although I think that one's pretty much a shoo-in. And maybe it's not Black Ops 7, although it seems like maybe there's some hinting at that, and I would say Black Ops 7 will be a pretty big deal announcement in the Nintendo Direct. So, assuming it is Black Ops 7, what is that other game? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm hoping that you guys have some really good ideas on what this other 7 would be, because I'm not sure. And I'm kind of waiting for someone to say it and be like, yep, that makes way more sense than anything else. So, let me know in the comments below. But that is all for now, everyone. I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.